1961, didn't you? When you were a clapper loader, in fact.
Right. Yeah, I started with Gerry really through Sylvia.
Through Sylvia?
Through Sylvia, yeah. I worked with Sylvia on the Robin Hood series of Robin Studios. And as the series was coming to an end, she said, look, would you be interested in coming to meet my boyfriend? That's Gerry, we're looking for crew, and we've got on well together. So I said, yeah, I'll come across. So I got on my moped. You may laugh, it got me from A to B. And I went across the Slough, starting in I think it was, had an interview, and Gerry offered me the job there on the spot. And I thought, hang on a minute, what? These are puppets. What am I going to learn? And believe it or not, what I've learned through Gerry Anderson and all the series has helped me throughout my career in the last 50, 60 years. And I've pitched lots of ideas that Derek Meddings had, and Brian, who's just got. But yeah, so once we got into it, it was a fantastic, good learning curve on how to make films. So,
now,
yeah.
Robin, you were also a clapper loader. Can you explain to us what that job actually entails?
Yeah, well, it's clapper loader is actually for clapping the board when you're doing sound, but obviously we weren't recording sound in Thunderbirds. But when I went on there,
talking of sound, I think we've got a bit of a hum up here, haven't we? Is there anybody who can help us?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you.
He's still got the old magic, haven't you?
Action.
So, sorry, Robin, a clapper loader.
yeah, it's basically what I did. I was just put the clapperboard in, so you re-recording what shots are written on the board. You can see that. And also loads of film in the magazines, which we did in a dark room there. So I was loading the film in the magazine and then give it to the focus puller, who was happened to be my brother on there as well.
Right.
And that's how I started as a clapper loader there. But I knew Norman Foster, who was I knew Norman Foster, who was the production manager there.
I'm inclined to turn these microphones off, actually.
How can we hear at the back?
Just about.
You okay?
It's that one actually. It's your mic.
Can I speak like that? Can you still hear me?
There you are.
Yeah.
How's that? Can you hear me?
I've had problems with that this morning.
Really?
Yeah.
I can still see a slight hum.
Yeah, do you want to turn off then?
It's boring.
Okay.
It's a puppet! Nice one then.
So Robin, how old were you? This must have been a very junior position at the studio.
Yeah, I think I was probably 17, 18 when I started, because I started when I was 15 at Rank Film Laboratories in Denham, and I left there, and then my brother had already been working on Thunderbirds, and John Reed, who was the cameraman there, he knew my brother, who got him in there, and my brother mentioned me to him when a clapper loader's job came up, and I got a job there, but I already knew Norman Foster from the labs anyway, so that's how I got in there, and it was the most incredible incredible job I've ever had, actually. It was absolutely amazing those days. As someone said, it was just, we were pioneering. Nobody knew what to do, and just make it up and go along.
Well, you mentioned, Alan, that you were, when you arrived for work on Supercar, it was not at a studio of the sort that we would recognise. It was actually on the Slough Trading Estate.
Slough Trading Estate, and on the walls was egg boxes, you know, these you put your dozen eggs on. They couldn't afford soundproofing, so therefore, to keep the sound out from the roads around it, they stuck these egg boxes all the way around,
right,
which survives. So yeah, it was a tiny little studio, but some good stuff come out. And I can always remember after we started shooting and we saw what was happening with the puppeteers, their monitor was reversed, by the way. So when they're watching the monitor, they could duplicate what the camera was seeing on their monitor. It was reversed to what I was looking at, because they were looking the other way with me. So they could actually act the puppets.
Now, I believe this process, which is used all the time now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I believe this process was invented.
Yeah, Gerry did it, yeah.
Gerry came up with it himself.
He came up with it. We were using, to start off with, we were using an old Philips camera on the back in black and white, that if you were operating, if you got knots, you had to guess where your camera was going. But
so essentially the problem was that the puppeteers were standing on a gantry, and they were obviously only looking down on what so they couldn't tell if they were doing something wrong.
They were looking at a monitor.
But that's what they came up with, monitor.
That's what Gerry came up with, was that idea, and that's when he used the old Philips camera. But when which they're using today, what they actually designed then was a zoom lens, with a prism in it that reflected off 10% of the image that came through, and that was straight up onto a monitor for the director to watch, and the quality was 10 times better than our early days. As I say, it was a bit of pioneer. But, no, it was quite sophisticated.
And in those days, you only shot on 35mm film, didn't you? That must have been incredibly expensive, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Black and white to start with, and then obviously when we got to Stingray, we went over onto colour.
But interesting, you worked on Fireball, you were using processes like back projection, weren't you?
Yeah, we did. Well, back projection, what it basically was, we would go out, let's say we wanted somebody, as if it was going down a country lane, we'd go out and shoot a plate with a car driving along, which would give you your movement. Then that would be projected onto a screen, and the artist, if you want to know the word, puppet, being Steve Zodiac, he was the man, he would be in the foreground. It would look like he was on his little scooter thing, looking for something, so it just gave us that movement. But also, on this little scooter, he had a gun built down the bottom, a pipe. Now, Derek Meddings, who was a brilliant special effects man, but don't forget we're pioneering here. Anyhow, Derek says, I've got the thing right, flames are going to come out, it's going to look really, really good. But I will admit, on the camera, we barricaded ourselves in, because although Derek said it was going to be fine, sometimes it just wasn't fine. So anyway, I'm looking through the camera, and there's Steve Zodiac, and it's all going like that, and Derek fires. Biggest bloody explosion you've ever seen in your life, and everyone's down. And when we come up, there is Steve Zodiac's head with a pair of handlebars. His little scooter had disintegrated. So, yeah, we had lots of fun, things like that, which were fun to work on. As I say, it was a learning curve. So, yeah.
Robin, did you work closely with Derek Meddings?
Yes, I did.
I mean, the guy's a legend, isn't he, really?
Oh, yeah.
Brilliant man, brilliant.
Very good friend of ours. We were. It was a family. The whole thing with AP Films and Century 21 was one big family. Everybody mucked in and did things and helped each other out. So when we had on the special effects, when I was working on special effects with Gerry, there'd be a lot of downtime on camera when they were building sets and rearranging things. But we always get muck in, and we used to help build the sets and do anything that Derek wanted us to do. So we worked very closely with Derek as a camera point of view, as well as his special effects technicians did.
And were you aware at the time, I mean, Alan used the word pioneering, were you aware at the time that you were creating new techniques, or was it just a case of trying to get the job done in time?
We knew we were getting better, and I think that's pioneering. From our mistakes, we learned, even as far as Mary would tell you, as far as the puppets were concerned, the lip sync, if the lips weren't opening wide enough, it didn't look convincing. Yeah. So they invented a new mechanism for inside the mouth. Yeah. On everything, we did move forward, from props to puppets to special effects, and for the usage of lenses. I mean, so I come up through the camera department, as did Robin, and you know, you can get different effects with different lenses. It can distort, it can improve and make it look a lot better. And that's something else I learned, how to use the right lenses for the right jobs.
So what was the perception, I mean, if you've met other people, I'd imagine you probably felt rather isolated on the Slough estate, I guess.
It wasn't Shepperton.
It wasn't Shepperton or Elstree, I guess, but when you met other people in the industry, what was the perception of the work that you were doing?
To begin with, I don't know what to do it for, what do you want? But as the popularity of the shows started to increase, then everyone wanted to work on it. They all wanted to come and get a job there. It was,
because Gerry used to tell me himself that he was a little embarrassed sometimes if he met other people. They asked him what he did. He went, but of course, as the decades have gone on and these series have become recognised as classics, I guess the perception has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what is amazing in my career. I mean, I've worked on very big feature films. I mean, I've gone on and done lots of big films around the world. And when people talk to you about what your career is, you say I worked on Superman, or I worked on this and that and the other, and got Bond, But the minute I say I worked on Thunderbirds, oh, did you? Oh, that was amazing. That is big directors. I've been talking to directors, and you worked on Thunderbirds. Oh, that was incredible. And that to me is just, it's unique. It's just amazing.
Excuse me interrupting. You're very special people, aren't you? Because if it weren't for you, cinema wouldn't be where it is today.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, you guys have made it all what it is today. So I'll thank you for that from the bottom of my heart.
Added to our childhoods.
When
we had childhoods.
Well, one of the great innovations, one of the many innovations of AP Films was switching to colour photography. Wasn't it, Alan? Which happened on Stingray.
Yeah.
How much did colour photography change your job? Because you'd already made Supercar and Fireball
XL5.
Yeah, in black and white.
Yeah, and we went on to, as I say, and it was for the Americans, obviously. That's why we went on. We didn't really have.
Well, because the Americans had colour.
They wanted colour. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's why we actually went over onto colour.
But did it actually change the job at all or not?
Only as far as lighting was concerned. You have to light colour very, very flat. You use a lot of diffusion and let the colours do the job for you. The vividness of the colours will stand out more. If you flood it with light, you'll start losing your colour. If you soft light it, your colours will come out. And that's why we went over. But that had its trials as well. Let's say, Stingray underwater. How do you go underwater? How do you get this thing to dive in and then go underneath? Then you see it going past and there's bubbles coming from the back of it. All those sort of things, if you just let it go through without the bubbles, it wasn't moving, it didn't look real. So we shot through a tank for a start, and therefore the scale of the fish had to be really, really...
Sorry, you say you shot through a tank?
We shot through.
You didn't put Stingray in the tank?
No.
No, okay.
That whole set was built behind it, but I was shooting through a tank with little fish, and some, coming up from the bottom obviously, there was some weed, or that's all what looked like weed which you get in the tank. But we used to feed a small air tube through and hide it behind. So the track that the Stingray actually took, we just blew the water and we pulled the tube and all the bubbles went. It looked like it was making some bubbles. And that was trial and error. That was
I think certainly from a special effects point of view, I believe water and fire are the two trickiest things to fake, aren't they? Because you can't alter the scale, can you?
Just talking about Century 1 to Century 2-1, everybody that worked there, I would say Derek Meddings, he went straight on and he's got Oscars for these Bond films. Dave Lane, he had a very successful, or still has probably, production company.
He does, yeah.
I have had a production company, or had.
Yeah.
So people that worked there learnt a lot and they seem to have got on in their given jobs.
Well, Robin, it was shortly after this, it was around this time that you joined, wasn't it, I think, because you started work on Thunderbirds, which was the series that was made after Stingray. And it was also around this time that Gerry and Sylvia's company, AP Films, was bought, I believe, by Lou Grade. who I'm sure everybody in this room knows who Lou Grade was, but he was the guy that owned ATV and ITC. He was a big shot. Did he ever come to the studio?
Oh yeah. Yes, he paid a visit at the studio with his brother Bernard Delphon, and I can't remember.
There are a few more suits, weren't there?
Yeah, there's quite a few suits, and Reg Hill was showing them around.
No, Reg Hill was Gerry's business
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah. And he was showing them around, and we were told they were coming down, and would we create an explosion, special effects, to make it look really good for him. So we'd stop what we were doing, and we were doing actually a snow sequence, and which we used to use talcum powder and salt mixed together. The salt kept the talcum powder down, so it still looked real. So what we used to do, polystyrene sheets with all this talcum powder in, and we used to keep it in a gantry at the back of the studio, and we put it all up there and rigged this thing that it was a little house that was going to be blown up. And when we used to do the explosions, we used to have to wear oilskin coats and hats and a respirator, and the camera had a variac control on it, which you used to wind up to get the speed, and we were shooting at 120 frames per second on these explosions. And you know, they all came in, and Sean Whittaker Cook, who was directing it, said, "Oh, Mr. Gray, would you stand over there, because that's quite safe over there, because the explosion's happening over there, and you're obviously safe over there." So we were filming this, we set it all up to do this house, and got the camera up to speed, 120 frames, and say, bang, this thing blew up. The camera stopped and all kind of, and we all turned around to look at Lou Grade, and the whole party was standing there, covered from head to foot in talcum powder. Cigar, still puffing away. And Reg Hill was walking around, absolutely in panic, wiping his coat. And they
Lou Grade turned and said, "That's how you do it, isn't it?"
But nobody believed that. Everybody believed that Sean Whittaker Cook did it on purpose.
Oh, really?
It was a pure accident.
Oh, right.
But it happened to be standing under this polished iron with tap out, and the explosion rocked the polished iron and shook. He brought all this stuff down. But he still bought the company.
He did. Yeah, he obviously had enough faith in you. Now, you mentioned in that story that you were shooting at 120 frames per second. Now, I understand if you're making a live-action feature film, you shoot at 24?
25 for
25.
20,
Yeah.
25 or 24.
Yeah.
So why did you shoot at 120?
When it's projected, it's still projected at 24 or 25 frames. So if you shot faster, when it's projected at a slower frame rate, the whole thing, it slows down, so it makes it look more real, because the whole thing goes into slow motion. So we're actually basically, you're showing slow motion.
And on the explosions, where the explosion was, we would put bits of like balsa wood, stuff like that, so when it actually went, you'd get fragments going up as well,
Right.
and this is what slows it down, so you get
Right.
this movement. And also the explosion itself, you see it build and the flame come.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it.
So when we watch Thunderbirds now and we see the big explosion in the title sequence, that was when you were actually shooting it, but it's slowed down to
slowed right down. Yeah.
This must have used up even more stock. I remember Gerry telling me that he used to get his stock from Eastman Colour, and I remember telling me that around 64, 65, he had a real crisis because there was relatively little colour stock in the country, and you guys were just eating it up.
Yeah, especially in special effects. I mean, so you could go for 1,000-foot mag
Right.
on one shot, not a problem. And then if that shot didn't work, you go and do it again. You use another 1,000-foot.
Yeah.
It burned. It really did burn film.
So, aside from the special effects, when you were actually shooting the puppets, I believe they were not very easy to work with. I mean, how much could you get done in a day, for example?
Well, you got a script. When I was directing the puppets, I had to get 4.5 minutes screen time a day.
That's quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, but you had to push for that. Some days you got 5.5. You could lose a bit if you had some wider shots to do. But yeah, 4.5 minutes, 2 weeks on the floor, 2 weeks off preparing. So when you go off and you prepare the next one, you're sorting out the special effects from the puppet side. The puppets have got to tie up, or the special effects have got to tie up with the puppets, especially if you've got somebody in a car or in a craft or whatever. So if you establish a wide shot of one of the Angel aircraft going through, when you cut in, we've got a segment with an underneath control, so we can have a complete canopy over the top. No screens. the strings for underneath. So that's why
Right.
they look
Right.
they look a little bit better
Yeah.
than the normal strung ones. So.
Yeah. So Robbie, by this time you were a well, talk about Captain Scarlet there, weren't we? By this time you were a focus puller, yeah, working alongside.
Yeah, when I started, Alan, as I said, was the camera operator and I was the clapper loader. And then when Alan left on Captain Scarlet, he went up to directing on Captain Scarlet. We all went up. I went up to focus puller, my brother went up to operator.
Right.
So we were still working with Alan, but Alan was directing. And that's the way it went on for the rest of the puppet series until we got into UFO.
You mentioned strings earlier. I know that Gerry in particular was extremely keen that the audience shouldn't be able to see them.
That was my job. It was one of my jobs. I just used to do my best to get rid of the strings. And what we actually used was anti-flare number 1.
What's that?
Anti-flare, it takes shine off, and it's slightly sticky. Yeah, and then I would use puffers, dried paint puffers, different colours. And what I'm looking at, if it was a static shot, I could blend the colours in by puffing it down. Puppeteers used to go mad because it used to get in the hair.
Right.
So what we used to do then was we put like a skull cap over with the slits in, so I could go down as close as I possibly could to get rid of it. Because if not, the following day in rushes, he'd come in and say, yeah, it was great, but you should see the state of the strings. So
Would he make you do things again, or?
if we have time, yeah, but in the main, no. I mean, say in this day and age, you could have strings, get rid of them straight away.
Yeah,
Piece
yeah,
of
yeah.
cake,
Yeah.
just paint them out.
But sometimes I notice in some scenes you have some of the sets have vertical lines painted in the background, didn't they?
That
I
helps.
guess that was done to
yeah, that was
disguise.
yeah.
Yeah, I never understood I never completely understood his obsession with removing the strings because everybody knew they were puppets.
Well, that's right. And, you know, they would, I say, the earlier heads, like Stingray and Fireball, XL5, were much bigger. And the Thunderbird heads were much bigger than the Scarlet, 90 and Secret Service heads. Everything was scaled down, then the heads.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was, but, as I say, the puppeteers, and also using this anti-flare, it could weaken the strings as well.
Oh,
And we could lose time, you know, especially if you're halfway through a shot and all of a sudden one of those strings go and you... You're there. We all did it, didn't we? Yeah.
We call them strings, but they had to carry an electrical signal, didn't they?
Yeah, that 50 volt charge used to come down via an electromagnet in the mouth, which would, and then obviously if it was a lot of syllables in the word, you had to put them in manually as well. The machine would take some of them and put the clicks in, but how can I explain it? We're going away tomorrow. You'd get an open tomorrow. You'd have to put it in manually. So you had a lip sync operator.
God, yeah.
So you can see it was, yeah.
He would just break up. He would just break up the signal with a switch, so that if it was coming through, it would be a script, and it was coming through on the tape that he could hear the dialogue, and he'd just break it with a switch, and he'd just flicking a switch. It's a very, very skilled job that was.
Yeah.
So, Robin, did Gerry and Sylvia have different responsibilities in the studio? Did you report to them for different things, or?
No. They said that they viewed the rushes. Only when we were shooting pilots would Gerry come down to the floor.
Oh.
He wanted to put his input into it.
Right.
But apart from that, he was the main contact with ATV. Reg, you see, wandered around Reg Hill.
Yeah.
John Reed was another one of the partners. I
Yeah.
think he was a lesser partner, John.
Yeah.
He was our lighting cameraman. He was.
Yes.
He was there. You know.
Yeah. So if you had any camera queries, you presumably would
Yeah,
go to
John was there. Yeah.
And Reg would have responsibility for.
The art department, more or less.
The art department.
Bob Bell worked under Reg Hill.
Right.
But in the main, it was really left to the director to get the schedule through. You know, we had to push. Come on, guys, got to get going. We had to push to make sure we stayed on schedule. Because if you got too far behind, then you brought in overtime. And that's what they did.
You were all unionised, were you?
Oh, it was then.
Yeah.
It was really, especially ECU, the electricians.
Yeah.
So they were. We couldn't touch a light. It was one of those sort of scenarios. But no, at the end of the day, as Robin says, it was like a big family, and it had to be because I had to tie up my puppets with the special effects. special effects had to tie up with me. If we wanted something special doing on a set, we had to go and see Bob. I remember one thing we did, that was on Scarlet, and one of the angels was tied up or whatnot else, and there was a spear on the floor, and I made sure that the spear had a disc around it, so that when it went into somebody, it would stop you with me. But I didn't do it for that reason, because she was strapped. She could put her foot on the pointed end, and it would swing up, and she could grab it and do it that way round. So they redesigned something like that for me, to get me, so I can get what I wanted from the shop.
Now, Robin, it must have been hard enough working with puppets, but there's one episode I remember very clearly where you worked with alligators as well, which must have been asking for trouble. I mean, surely it was hard enough to make anyway, wasn't it, without that?
Oh, we all had the big wellies, didn't we?
We had a lot of those right waders that, but the other thing with it, what you've got to understand, is that with film in those days, the ASA was so slow, I think about 32 ASA and something like that, ASA colours. We had to use a hell of a lot of light to get the depth of field.
Yeah.
And so they just poured light into the puppets to try and get the depth of field so that it looked right. And there was one thing, and I'm sure everybody's seen Attack of the Alligators, where we got these baby alligators. They were about this big. They were supposed to be giants compared to the puppets they were. And we got them in the tank, and I can remember we got so far behind on our shooting, it was actually catching up with the broadcast. So the broadcasting was coming down and the shooting was coming up. So we were actually shooting the week before it was being broadcast.
Oh my God.
And we had to finish this sequence of these alligators. We came in on a Friday.
Friday we were right through to the Sunday night.
And I went home Sunday night.
Straight through. That was with Derek Meadows was on that. That's when we were in the house. Now that's what Robin says, that the alligators we were using were only about that big. And I wouldn't get in the tank, but Derek used to get in with his weight. And he'd be looking, and all of a sudden he'd like, he'd grab it and lift it. And, because we wanted to come into the, off of a beach more or less, into the water. But they wanted to go and stay in the warm light, so they had to go. So what we did, we shot it in reverse. It was in the thing and it went back up onto it. So if you look, it's the most awkward turn. It's this alligator starts to get into the water because it's come out the other way. But the big shots we did with the house when the alligators really beating the house up, we made up a massive tail on a piece of wood down the middle, all scaled with it looked like the alligators, and that's what's whacking the house and beating it to death. It wasn't a real tail, because he didn't understand that English, that alligator. It wouldn't do it.
But the thing is, well, I was saying about the wall, because of the light, there's so many lights on it, the alligators went to sleep. And they were around like that, and they couldn't, how are we going to make them move? And somebody had the bright idea, well, let's just get a battery and a couple of wires and connect it to their legs. And when you want them to move, we connect the battery. So when you see us flashing about like that in the film,
It's only
12 volts, but it was enough to wake them up.
Right, I bet, yeah. No wonder you wouldn't get in with them. Well, Thunderbirds led to bigger and better things. I mean, it led to feature films, didn't it?
Yes, it did, yeah.
Led to Thunderbirds feature. Did either of you work on the feature films?
Well, although I wasn't directing it, I actually worked with Derek on it. And we went out to Portugal, and we've hired a helicopter with a French-speaking pilot who was very, very good, I might add. But the shot we were trying to get was Alan falls out of the spacecraft and he's falling towards Earth. And this is what we call a point of view. This is the helicopter's going to drop and it's going to spin to simulate what was happening to Alan. So there's myself, Derek Meddings. I was operating for Derek. Now, this helicopter, all it had was a square hole in the bottom. And I'm doing a handheld shot with the camera. And on my belt, Derek's put another belt through, and he's put 2 feet either side, and he's holding me by the belt. And he's actually drawn a diagram for the French-speaking helicopter pilot. Right, here we go. We're about 1,500 feet, and Derek goes, "Done." And I'm looking through, and here we go. And this island and rock is getting bigger And I said, it's looking, you've got it, Derek, it's looking really, really good. You've got it, Derek, and he's still going down and down and down and down. The pants. That's champion pants. And all of a sudden, the pilot whacks his rotors on to slow us down. And he goes, I could see all the detail in the rock. The lens was a little bit closer than what the thing was, but I said, thanks, Derek, that was really enjoyed that. But we had fun. That was amazing. That's when making movies were fun. Really.
Well, things got more and more sophisticated, and you started to leave the puppets behind. There's a series which for many years was sadly quite obscure, a series called The Secret Service, which didn't get shown in a lot of places, did it? But this was the first time, I think, that you mixed actors with was that a tricky thing to do?
Yeah. Dick Joy, why did you in your book with that? It's in my eye.
Yeah.
Stanley.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, I mean, for a focus group, was there any particular challenges? Because you had to show the actors in long shot, didn't you? And you showed the puppets in.
Yeah, well, basically, what we had to do, mine was not 1968, something like that. Again, it was pioneering. No one had these effects. We had to make when the puppet shrinks. Well, it's live action. He shrinks down and goes into the puppet. So we had to show him going. Shrinking down in shot. And of course, if you use a zoom lens, it goes like that, and the feet go on like that. So we had to work out a way of shooting it. So the feet stayed on the bottom of the frame. Yeah, it made him look as if he was shrinking. So when you zoomed out, he got smaller, and the feet stayed at the bottom. So we worked out a way of setting the zoom lens just off angle, so it was mounted just off angle, so we could actually do this zoom. And it would stay. It's very difficult to explain what it is, but it's without going into load points on zooms. But it worked, and that nowadays you do it on CGI or
just
whatever.
Yeah.
You can do.
Program the computer, it does it for you.
Yeah.
But that was a first.
Yeah.
And again, it was another first that we had this, as Alan said, this big Longino zoom lens, which the camera operator had a monitor on the side of the camera, so he was operating off the monitor as well.
Video assist now.
Video assist. No, nobody in those days had that, and it went on. It went on to the Avengers as well. The Avengers took it on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, director could see. It helped director, camera operator, and the puppeteers. But there was one incident on Secret Service. I'll never forget it. It's where Matthew Miner and we needed live action dogs. And we needed a Great Dane for size, to get the scale right. And with this Great Dane, it had a little friend, it was like a little chihuahua. So anyway, we broke for lunch and we went over and had our lunch. And the doors into the studio, they spun like that. So they opened and then they closed themselves. So we finished lunch and I was walking behind them and the lady with her Great Dane and the little chihuahua. So of course the Great Dane makes a charge at the doors, and they open. The chihuahua comes. As the poor little thing comes, the two doors wedging. You saw the funny side. It didn't hurt your butt. It was.
No. There's been quite a lot of animal abuse on this panel. Well, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to take questions for Anne and Robin. So while you're thinking about what you'd like to ask them, I'd like to talk to you about what happened next, which was you left the puppets behind completely, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you made a show called UFO, which I think is, represents some of your best work, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
Was that must have been, you directed episodes of UFO,
yeah.
You must have been still very young, it must have been nerve-wracking, mustn't it?
Yeah, it was actually. It's a big difference from people to, well, from puppets to people. But we were fortunate, the actors that they'd employed, Eddie Bishop, George Searle, Michael Billington, all those sort of people were quite experienced, and you only had to sit and talk to them through the script, talk them through the way you felt it. But I always used to say to them, come on, what do you see on this thing? How would you play it? Which way? that way, if they're doing the way they feel it, you're going to get a better performance. And yeah, it was quite the first morning on the floor at MGM Studios in Palmer, in Wood.
No longer with us.
And we were the last series on the floor and it closed.
Right.
After UFO.
It was our fault.
Yeah. Bad old.
Yeah.
But it was quite, challenging. You saying, well, I want the camera. I knew my angles. I knew what I wanted to do with the camera, which was the good thing. And George Saul was a bugger actually, George, but he had a fantastic sense of humour. Anyway, I worked out this shot. I said, the camera's going to come down. I want you to walk on. End up with Eddie, so. So I said, he said, is that the way you see it? I said, yeah. Oh, he said. I said, I suppose really I'm the director and that's the way it's got to go, isn't it? Good lad, he said. Get on with it.
So when you were on UFO, Robbie, did it feel like a promotion? Did it feel as though things were getting bigger and better? Do you prefer working in live action? Or?
Oh yeah. I mean, it is. It's much different. It's much better. I mean, you have a great relationship with the actors. I mean, Ed and Mike and George were absolutely incredible. I mean, it was lovely working with people like that. Quite friendly with them. But it's nice. It was much nice. I tell you, a very funny story actually is that we started shooting. I'll never forget it. April the 28th, 1969. And it was a Monday. And my wife went into labour on Sunday night.
Oh, that's why you can remember it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I had to ring Norman Foster because I had his phone number because he lived near me. I had to ring him on the Sunday night and say, I can't come in tomorrow. The very first day shooting of UFO, Gerry was directing it. Can't come in tomorrow because the wife's giving birth. So they said, I've got somebody else in. Anyway, Tuesday I went in. And as I walked on the floor, the first thing that Gerry said to me was, I hope you're not going to make a habit of this.
Is it the boy or the girl?
Girl.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Alan or Robbie?
I'll just give you one other little thing that happened on UFO. Kill Straker, you've probably seen the thing, and there's a sequence where Eddie Bishop's trying to get Michael Douglas, he's trying to break in actual facts. So he's really knocking him about. And what I didn't know in my naivety was that I said, look, what I want is 1, 2. I didn't realise that you cannot fake a slap. Punch you can, but not a slap. It turns all the face. So anyhow, we turn over. And we go, action. And Ed starts his dialogue and he walks up to him. And he hit him a cracker. One that way, and I saw Michael Burnett go. And I'll tell you what, it's the first time when we cut, and they were hard on the camera crew and all of us, they were all and Binky had rosy cheeks.
Chap in the blue shirt here.
When UFO was first broadcast, you had some fatuous critics making remarks like you can't tell the actors from the puppets. That must have been soul destroying. Did it?
You can't please everybody all the time. In my opinion, well, let's put it this way, it was so far advanced in its years that people would, girls in green wigs and, didn't have lovely bodies. Eh? It was the same thing again. He was pioneering again. He was wanted something futuristic. We're going to meet somebody on the moon. Yeah.
I think that sort of comment, and I know what you mean, was probably not a reflection on the acting or the direction. I think it was probably a reflection on the way that Sylvia dressed them. No, because I'm being serious, because Sylvia used to dress the puppets, didn't she?
Yeah.
And then when he went to live action, she dressed the actors as well, didn't she?
Yeah.
And they were,
the wigs and everything was all Sylvia's
so
idea.
that's probably it, because there was a continuity of costume design, wasn't there?
Yes.
I guess, so that was probably, which maybe in retrospect,
I think
was the gift to some of the critics, wasn't it?
I think there's a very bad quote that was actually you're talking about was that they actually said, congratulations, Gerry Anderson, you actually made actors look like puppets. I think that was very, very bad. I think that was uncalled for.
Especially when you actors.
I don't know
Canberra,
if it was
George
one of the
Shield, things like that.
newspapers that said it. And it was wrong.
I don't think it was a reflection on anyone on the show. I think it was just critics trying to
No,
be
it was
smart.
just it was a cheap shot and it was easy, wasn't it? And I think UFOs held up remarkably well, actually.
Yeah,
In fact, I believe I read recently that it's one of ITV's biggest selling DVDs ever.
Yeah.
The sales figures for UFO are in 6 figures now. It's incredible.
It was massive initially.
Is it?
Yeah,
It's
I've been out to Italy, so's Robin.
And at the end of the day, you know, we're still here talking about it nearly 50 years later, and no one can remember the name of the guy that made that quote. So, are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
What gave you the incentive to get up in the morning and go out and do your job? Did you think you were actually on a winner, or did you think at any time you were wasting your time, or?
Can I be honest with you? I've had a fabulous career, and even up to a couple of years ago, I couldn't wait to get out of bed, go to work. It wasn't a job. It was a laugh. It was, you know, it wasn't a career, it was a disease. It really was. You got up and you enjoyed it.
What did your parents actually think of you going at that age, and, you know,
I
17, 18 years of age?
I was lucky actually. My father was a studio electrician.
All right.
And I actually got a job as a postboy at Shepland Studios. That's how I actually started my career. And from there I went on to clapper loading like Robin did. And my brother was a boom swing, he was a sound engineer. So really, it was a family thing.
Yeah.
So it was, you know.
I guess Century 2 was an apprenticeship for both of you, wasn't it? Or-
Yeah.
Because I know you've had a fantastic career post, you know, the Anderson work as well, haven't you?
Yeah. I've only just retired recently, so.
Right.
I did my last job. Oh, I tell a lie. Did my last job a few weeks ago, which the company now is my son's. He runs the company, and he's a very good producer. And he lets me out the cage sometimes just to go and have a look.
Just as long as there aren't the animals involved.
Yeah, that's right.
Any more questions?
John.
Oh, so there's one here.
Just as a personal recollection, what was Derek Meadows like to work with? Both as a friend and as a colleague.
I started working with Derek when he was working for Les Bowie at Anglo-Scottish Pictures, when he was a matte artist. Now, a matte artist was a travelling matte. You could actually shoot in studios and they could paint in the background. They did it at the labs. It was a special process that they did it. And that's when I first met Derek. And then we both ended up at Century 2 at the same time on Supercar. And from then, I worked with Derek all the way through. Fantastic guy. I've got an idea. If he was stuck, he always had an idea, or he'd say, "Anyone got any?" And he'd throw it to the floor and say, "We've got to do this. Come on," you know. But I think that's what he was brilliant at. Who was it? Krubeck tried to pinch him off the Thunderbirds series, or off the series. Yeah, he wanted to go. Did he do 2001 or whatever?
He was approached to do 2001, and Derek wouldn't do it. He wouldn't need Gerry, and then Brian did it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So both working at Slough at the same time.
Yeah.
But designer craft and things like that, he designed the majority. But Mike Trim, his assistant, designed a lot as well. Mike was very, very good.
And Reg Hill, I believe, used to design as well.
The meat and veg Reg used to do a bit.
Meat and veg Reg.
Yeah, meat and veg, that's what we used to call him.
But
He had a habit, he used to go, "All right, mate." When he spoke to, you know. Yeah.
Okay.
But Derek was amazing guy. Really was. A lovable guy. I used to be friendly with him. Used to go around his house for dinner and things like that. So, he was a great guy to work with. And as Alan said, it was like getting up every morning and going on holiday. It wasn't a job. People used to say, "What's it like?" I said, "It beats working for a living."
A little tale about Derek. When we were shooting model stuff, you have to get the camera as low as you possibly can, and we would build a false front on it and the lens would distort it so it would look good. But to do this, the camera had to be in a well. So we had the studio floor cut out and a 4-foot well put in there, which were covered up when we weren't doing the angles, but we were doing the angles. But this one, you had to have all the lights out. The only thing that was lit was the set. Derek come wandering in and said, "Well, how's it going, Lex?" He disappeared. We saw. He said, "I've just been in the pit of peril."
We've got time for one more question from this gentleman.
As I say, when you were doing the directing, were you directing the voice cast and the sound recording sessions as well, or did you just get the tape presented to you?
No, we get the tape presented to you. And that's how I used to work. Believe it or not, that's how I used to work. The visuals had to go with it. I had a TAC machine at home, and I used to play the voice track. And if the voice went up, that would call for a close-up. But if it was a long load of spiel, I wouldn't just do one angle, I'd do 2 or 3 to make it, to pace it better so it looked more interesting. So yeah, they were all pre-recorded and supplied to us. And as I say, that's what I used to do at home when I was working the scripts out. Just run the tape backwards and forwards and then plan my schedule out as such. And on that note, we'll leave you.
Yeah, well, I feel sadly we've only skimmed the surface of the incredible work that these two guys did.
Just hope it was worthwhile.
I think it was, yeah.